Hello there, people of the internet. So, interesting concept. I love the idea of swapping calibers through your firearms. And for the most part, by a pretty wide margin, you can do so without too terribly much trouble, right? So let's go ahead and look at some of the easier ones and maybe some of the more difficult ones and some things that might, you know what, let's go ahead and let's just dive right into it. So first off, your ARs. This right here is probably the easiest way to swap calibers, which is one of the big things that makes me say this right here is one of the best platforms out there because of your ability to swap calibers. There's a whole plethora of calibers where all you have to do is swap a barrel and like swap a bolt. And you can get just a good variety of different cartridges out there that are on the market that can run in this lower receiver. They can run in a variety of different magazines. Many of them just run in a standard 223 magazine. Like, you just have so many different options out there for swapping calibers with your AR. Doesn't even have to be an AR-15. There's a good number of calibers out there that you can swap out with like an AR-10. This is the easy way to swap out calibers. Like, if you don't want to worry about barrel changes or anything like that, you can just swap out the upper receiver. You can go out and get yourself another upper receiver, and literally there's two little pins right here. You pull those out, you take the old one off, you slap the new one on. I can't show you that because YouTube won't let me. YouTube reviewer, I'm sure you're watching this right now. Take note on how I did not do that, and I'm just talking about it. So this right here is one of the easiest ways to swap calibers, and that's why, like I said before, that's probably one of the greatest weapons platforms or firearms platforms in general, just because of your ability to swap calibers. Now, there's some out there that are still pretty gosh darn easy, but not quite as easy. Now we're going to start getting into some of the more difficult things. So, of course, you could do barrel swaps, and with barrel swaps, there's just a good plethora of different options out there. However, if you're wanting to do a barrel swap, some platforms, like, it can be a little bit difficult, and you got to make sure everything's properly head spaced, and it can be a little challenging. You got to make sure that the head of the cartridge fits whatever bolt it is that you're using, otherwise you got to modify the bolt. But there's easier options out there. Like, for example, this right here is a Steyr M95. This right here is a straight pull rifle. This is actually a really nice little gun. This one in particular, it really is a nice little gun. But the M95 series, this is a real early one, and it is still chambered in the 8x50 cartridge, which I honestly prefer over 8x56. I'm a reloader. I can turn it, or I can make it very easily on a 7.62 by 54R brass. But with this being a little carbine, however it is you feel like pronouncing that, with that 8x50 cartridge, it just recoils a lot less. So I'm going to keep this in 8x50. But if you wanted to, say, turn this into an 8x56 rifle, which is a much more commonly available ammunition for the Steyr platform, the head of the cartridge is already the same, because the 8x56 is just an extended 8x50. So the head of the cartridge is already the same, so you don't have to worry about modification of the bolt or anything like that. All you would have to do is go out and get yourself a reamer for 8x56 and ream out the inside of the chamber right here, like really, really simple stuff. Just ream out the inside of the chamber, make sure your measurements are correct so you don't throw off headspace, and then you have an 8x56 cartridge. The bullet diameters are the same. The actual, like, width of the cartridge, I'm trying to explain this in a way to where like, people can understand this really simply. The width of the cartridges are going to end up being they're not the same for all intents and purposes, but they're going to end up overlapping to the point to where reaming out the chamber to 8x56 will work in an 8x50 chamber, versus wanting to convert it to like 8mm Mauser. The 8x50 cartridge, the body of that cartridge is larger than the 8mm Mauser. It's just a thicker cartridge. And so as a result, you couldn't ream it out to take 8x50 or to take 8x57 Mauser. Although the 8x57 is a longer cartridge than the 8x50 Steyr, it's a skinnier cartridge. There's no way to remove material for it to fit in there, so you would need what we are going to get into next. You would need some sort of chamber insert if you want to swap a rifle out for a cartridge that is a smaller one, like what the United States military did with the M1 Garand, however it is you feel like pronouncing that. Subscribe for the ping. Aha, that's awesome. Now I have to go find my clip. It fell over there into that pile of stuff. I gotta go hunt it down. But the United States military converted these 30-06 M1 Garand rifles. They converted them into 308, and they did that by adding a little insert that fit into the chamber to essentially shorten the chamber, because they could not just ream it out for... Well, they could not just ream out the extra material because there is no extra material. The 30-06 is a longer version of a 308. The head of the cartridge is the same. The body dimensions up to where it is different is the same, and so all they needed to do was add in that little insert to essentially decrease the size of the chamber. Now the problem with that is, well, they had issues with those things flying out. They also made some modifications to the magazine and whatnot, but that, for all intents and purposes, that goes beyond the scope of what it is that we're talking about here. But they had those inserts. I know that guns chambered in 7.62 by 45 oftentimes have inserts that allow them to be chambered in 7.62 by 39, which is a much more popular cartridge than 7.62 by 45. So that is another really good way. You can either ream it out like what I said with the Steyr, or you could adding an insert, if you can manage to make that happen in a way to where the insert can actually withstand being fired, like what the United States military did with the M1 Garand, and even then it didn't really work out. If you want to convert a rifle into a smaller cartridge than what it's already chambered in, most of the time you're going to need to get yourself a like a new barrel. Now, how about if we look into something like, let me go ahead and grab my 6.5 Carcano, however it is you feel like pronouncing that. This right here is a 6.5, oh no, this is a Steyr 8890. This right here is one that I got a hair on my lip. This is one that I converted, or not converted, this is one that I refurbished, and it looks very similar to my Carcano rifle, which is right here. So, Carcano, 6.5 Carcano is a 6.5 by 50, I think it's 52. And so, as a result, if I wanted to chamber it for a smaller 6.5 round, I would not really be able to. Like, if I wanted to just chamber a 6.5 Carcano into, say, 6.5 Creedmoor, which is a 48 millimeter case, then I would have to probably add one of those inserts, assuming that the dimensions that the dimension of the cartridge would allow that to work out. Odds are I would probably just end up having to do a barrel swap. But in theory, if I could add an insert like that, the actual bullet diameter of 6.5 Carcano is a 268 diameter bore. This particular one is a 266. But the 264 bullet of your 6.5 Creedmoor would be able to pass through that barrel no problem. So if I could put that insert inside of the barrel and have that insert properly stay to where I can run that 6.5 Creedmoor round inside of this rifle, I have no idea if the action of this would actually be able to handle that, but we're just talking hypotheticals here. Then the barrel itself should be able to run those cartridges just fine because it's already at a proper bullet diameter. That's one of the big, what's the word I'm looking for? One of the big things that companies will look for if they're trying to do ammunition conversions is they'll want already existing barrels, but they'll look at what it is they're already chambered in, and they'll look at what the bore diameter is. Like if it's a 268, you can run 264 bullets in it just fine. And 264 is like the most popular 6.5 round that is out there and available on the market nowadays. If I had my 6.5 Jap, like what I have right here, this is a 264 bullet, and it is a, I think it's a 6.5 by 50 cartridge. So in theory, I would be able to chamber it in 6.5 Carcano just by reaming it out, assuming that the dimensions line up, and I would probably need to do some modifications on the bolt because the bolt heads, I'm sure, are different. But I should be able to ream that out and have it run 6.5 Carcano, assuming that I load the 6.5 Carcano with 2.64 bullets, because the 6.5 Jap is a 2.64 bore. And then there's like way more complicated ones. Like, I know we're talking about 6.5 Carcano right here. The rifle that came before the Carcano was the Vetterli rifles, and they used to be chambered in like a 10.4 millimeter. Well, Italy, after the adoption of the 6.5 Carcano, they actually sleeved the barrels inside those Vetterli rifles to chamber them in 6.5 Carcano. So we had this really large, slow-moving black powder round, the 10.4 millimeter, that sent a huge piece of lead going down range relatively slowly. And then, since they wanted that 6.5 round, they couldn't just put a sleeve inside the barrel. They needed that barrel to be the appropriate size all the way down, you know, all the way through the entire length of the barrel. And since it was considerably, since 10.4 millimeters is considerably larger than 6.5 millimeter, they were able to slide a sleeve into the barrel, essentially cut, you know, the bore and the rifling and whatnot inside of that sleeve, and then chamber the rifle in 6.5 Carcano by doing that. In theory, since the bolt heads of 6.5 Carcano and 7.35 Carcano are the same, you should be able to, like, ream out the barrel of one of these, cut new rifling into it, and run 7.35 Carcano out of a converted 6.5 Carcano rifle as well. And that's one of the things that I considered doing for a minute, just because I really like 7.35 Carcano. It's not exactly the easiest cartridge to find, but I'm a reloader. I can reload that stuff pretty gosh darn easily. But having a long rifle Carcano, which are almost always 6.5 millimeter, having one of these in 7.35 would be really, really cool to have. Now, there's a whole plethora of different firearms out there, typically like your old school single shot black powder guns, like what I have right here. This is a trapdoor Springfield. There's a lot of these that have been converted into shotguns. And with the conversion of them into shotguns, that is pretty gosh darn easy to do. Oftentimes, they just kind of ream out the chamber. They might take out the rifling of the firearm itself with like a drill or something, but that's just one of those examples of a really easy conversion, because a shotgun, you don't need rifling, you don't need a specific sized bore. All you need is the chamber to fit the shell, and then the shell will send, you know, shotguns, slugs, buckshot, pellets, whatever it is that you're sending downrange, as assuming that the projectiles are smaller than the bore itself, which I would definitely recommend paying attention to. Then you would be able to shoot that through a shotgun. Shotguns have a very small set of rules that they have to follow in comparison to a rifle. So I think that I pretty much beat this topic to death. I just found it really cool and I wanted to talk about it, and that's why I put up the camera, and I figured that I'd go in depth on it. So thanks for watching, folks. Appreciate your time. I just heard something vibrate. Where's my phone at? It's over there. Appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below is a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off. Have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see y'all later. Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garrett.
shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.